and welcome to this David Icke Connector videocast. Well, there's been a new word circulating. It's not really a new word, but a new word in the public arena this week called prorogue or prorogation, which is a fancy way of saying that governments, as they have through the history of Parliament, have the right to end a session of Parliament, have a gap, and then start another. The reason that so many knickers have been in such a monumental twist this week is because Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, has activated that right to end the current session of Parliament, which has gone on for much longer than most do, and have the gap and then start another one. The reason the knickers have been twisting is because he's having that gap in the run-up to the United Kingdom leaving the EU, he says, will definitely happen on October 31st. And if the EU dark suits don't start negotiating properly a reasonable, fair, on both sides trade deal for the post-Brexit Britain, then he says, we're going to leave without a deal. And the truth is quite simple. The maths are quite simple. The majority of British people voted in the referendum to leave the European Union. The majority of members of Parliament that are supposed to represent the people of Britain don't want to leave, if that's the truth, or if the truth be told. So they're now kicking off, and the people that want to stay in the EU and the population are kicking off because they say this break in parliamentary or the sitting of Parliament will squeeze the time that MPs have to debate Britain's exit. Now, for debate, read stop. Because what they want to do is to force Johnson to go to the EU and ask for another 6-month extension to delay even further Britain leaving the EU, because the more that they can delay it, they think, the more likely they are to be able to stop it altogether. Now, to be fair, bullshit number one is the government's claim, Johnson's claim, that he's not invoked this ending of one session, a gap, and the starting of another because of Brexit. Well, Boris, mate, you have. I mean, you have. The idea is to squeeze the time in Parliament where laws can be made, etc., to stop Brexit. So don't bullshit me, Boris. That's why you've done it. But if we then apply the bullshit count to those who have been said knicker twisting this week, the political class across all the parties, then the bullshit is piled so frickin' high it shuts out the sunlight. Here we have the political class that doesn't want Britain to leave the EU, claiming that this move by Johnson is an affront to democracy. He's a tin pot dictator. Well, I've got no brief for Johnson. I don't support any of them. Whatever rosette they have, it's all part of a diversion to think that that's where power is for a start. But these people are claiming to be defending democracy and parliamentary sovereignty when they have, decade after decade, from the time that we joined what was then the European Economic Community, they have been handing that very parliamentary sovereignty, democracy, to the EU dark suit bureaucrats who've never seen a public ballot box in their bloody life. So we are now being asked to believe that this political class rabble are defending the very parliamentary democracy and sovereignty they have been giving away decade after decade. And because they've been giving it away and dark suits have been imposing their unelected will on the fine detail of people's lives in Britain, that's why the majority in the referendum voted to come out. And if you're talking about democracy, look at the definition. The will of the majority. Some people may think, well, maybe there are other systems that might be better than a stark one like that, but that's how it is. Democracy is the will of the majority. And the majority, in a very clear, one decision referendum, said we want out. But the political class does not want out. So they spent the last 3 years delaying, prevaricating, and trying to run down the clock. We're already past one deadline to come out. And now they want to pass another one. And they think the longer they can drag this out, the more likely it is they'll be able to stop it altogether, get a second referendum and overturn the votes. And of course, they're now talking about, we want a people's vote. We've just had one. I say just. Going into the distant past every day now. We've had one. We voted to come out. And of course, if they have a second vote and they overturn it, no one will be talking about a third referendum, just to make sure that that's what people want. No. We got what we want. We're out. We're out of here. Or in terms of the European Union, we're staying in here. So let's just very quickly compare that democracy, a clear referendum with a clear choice, and this parliamentary democracy that they're waffling on about this week. What does that mean? Parliament represents the people. No, it doesn't. That would be a bloody first. It represents the will of the hierarchies of political parties. And in terms of Brexit, the majority of the hierarchies are agreed we need to stay in the EU bureaucratic prison cell. But look at parliamentary democracy. Who decides what choices you have in terms of members of parliament? The people? No. The political party hierarchy. They decide who's going to stand in each constituency and thus what choice the people in that constituency have, and the same collectively in the country to choose who governs them or not. So it's the hierarchy that picks the MPs. And then the MPs come in and the hierarchy starts dictating to the members of parliament in the different parties, I say different parties, different masks on the same face, and starts telling them how they're going to vote. So here we have members of parliament who are supposedly voted by the local population, who are presented to the local population by the hierarchy of the parties, and then they go to parliament when they get in, and the hierarchy of the parties starts telling them how they're going to vote. That's why we have this so-called whip system, where they have a line under a motion or vote which says, we'd like you to vote the way the party says. Then you have two lines which says, we'd really like you to vote the way the party says. And then you have the three-line whip which says, vote the way the party says, or your political career is basically over. And if we've got anything on you, then we're going to threaten with revealing it, so you vote the way the party wants. And this is the parliamentary democracy that this rabble says it's defending against a referendum which is a clear statement of what the people majority want. So all this stuff about defending parliamentary sovereignty, defending democracy, load of old crap. And we've got this lady, Gina Miller, kind of came out of nowhere after the referendum result went the way she didn't want it to go. She's been throwing money around with a legal team, making challenges to government Brexit policy and procedure. She's in the middle of another one now over this prorogue that Johnson's announced. And Gina Miller says she's doing this to protect parliamentary sovereignty. See above. Well, where has she been when the British Parliament has been giving its sovereignty away year after year after year after year to the European Union bureaucrats? Where is democracy, Ms. Miller, when decisions are being made that affect the lives of every man, woman and child in the entirety of the European Union by unelected dark suits who have their own agenda? Of course, it's all, yet again, bullshit. Because Gina Miller is doing it not to defend parliamentary sovereignty. She supports giving it away to the EU. But because she wants to stop Brexit. And if only they were honest about it, wouldn't that be nice? Oh yeah, we're doing it because we don't want to leave. Okay, fair enough. But don't tell me you're defending parliamentary sovereignty. I mean, oh, please. So what we have is this alliance of the political class, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats and the Greens and the Scottish National Party. The Establishment Alliance, I call it. They are lined up in that image behind me. The poodles and the dogs begging. Oh yes, Mr. Darksuit, anything you say, woof woof. And that's called parliamentary sovereignty, by the way. the Liberal Democrats apart, who have such contempt for the democracy of the referendum, they openly say we want to stop Brexit. But the rest of them are hiding behind, no, we want to stop a no-deal Brexit. Any excuse will do. You want to stop Brexit. And we have a situation with Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, who has, throughout his political career, been an opponent of the European Union, who now has so little integrity and so little backbone to stand up for what he claimed all his political career really believed in, that he's now leading the campaign in Parliament to stop Britain leaving the EU on October the 31st. And once he says, it's because we want to stop no deal. No. He's just another part of the rabble that want to stop it altogether now. How he justifies that to himself, I have no idea, but somehow he must. And then you ask, why are we in this situation where we are heading towards a point where we will leave the European Union without a trade agreement with the EU? It's because the same political class from the start has sought to stop a no-deal Brexit being on the table. And that has had fundamental implications for why we are where we are now. You have a referendum, you decide to come out. So negotiations start between the British government, then under Theresa May, and the EU. But you're telling the EU, because of this political class rabble protecting sovereignty, that you are not going to leave without a deal. Now, my son Gareth came out with a wonderful analogy for that. You go into a car showroom and you say to the man in the suit, I want to buy a car. I want a deal. I want a good deal to buy a car. Oh, by the way, before you start, I just want to tell you that under no circumstances whatsoever am I going to leave this showroom without buying a car, right? What kind of deal do you think you're going to get? The worst. Because the showroom guy's got nothing to lose because you're going to buy a car anyway. You've told him. And that's how the negotiations, thanks to this rabble, with the EU were conducted. Here's the EU that has more to lose in terms of trade and finance than Britain does if Britain leaves without a deal. Being told, here's all the aces. We won't leave without a deal, so we'll just have to take whatever you offer. And of course, what was offered was disgusting, an insult to the people of this country by the bureaucrats. And the rabble then vote it down because they say it's so bad. Well, two reasons for that. One, they voted it down, most of them because they don't want a deal at all. But secondly, why was it so bad? Because the same people trying to stop Brexit now took all the negotiating power away from the British side by insisting that no deal was not an option. Now, what Johnson's done, and like I say, I don't support Johnson as a politician, I don't support any of them. What he's come in and said is, look, if we're going to have a decent deal, then no deal has to be on the table. So the EU actually has something to lose if they don't give us a decent agreement. What is happening now is that the rabble are seeking to do, again, repeat the actions of before and take no deal off the table. So they're saying to the car salesman, we are not going to leave the showroom without buying a car. And this rabble claim to be defending parliamentary sovereignty and doing the best for Britain. They have contempt for democracy. They have contempt for the will of the people. And if they were half honest, they would come out and say, we don't want to leave the EU and that's why we're doing it. But they won't, of course. Because the Liberal Democrats apart, like I say, come out openly, we want to stop it. The rest of them, they really don't want to admit that they have contempt for the will of the people. So they're giving us all these smoke screens. We're against no deal, or this, that, and the other, whatever excuse they can come up with. And the truth is, as I've been saying for year after year after year, is we don't have political choice. We have a political class, overwhelmingly. And what we've seen across these parties, the Labour Party and all the others, is that political class at work. The truth is that we are still waiting to leave the EU all these years after the referendum decision because of a simple equation. The majority of the British people in the referendum voted to leave the EU, and the majority in Parliament wants to stay in. And that is the whole foundation of all of it. And this is where we find ourselves yet again, with the political class seeking to usurp the will of the people. Trying to do it through Parliament, that's why Johnson is squeezing the time, whatever he may claim. And they're trying to do it in other ways via the courts. And we are going to go down to the wire because we are facing a decision between whether the will of the people will prevail or the will of the political class will prevail. And the political class will do everything they can to usurp the will of the people. We must not let them do it.